On the night Yu Menglong fell from a luxury tower in Beijing, the official story was over in hours. He had been drinking, he slipped, and he died. Case closed. But what if that wasn't the truth? Almost instantly, whispers began to swirl that shook the entertainment industry to its core. A mysterious USB drive, a farewell letter filled with despair, a peephole video hinting at something much darker, and then the names: Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, Dilraba, dragged into the storm by theories that they knew the truth, but were forced to stay silent. Were they witnesses, protectors, or prisoners of the same system that may have crushed you? Tonight, we dig through every rumor, every shadow, and every refutation to uncover why this story refuses to die. This is Criminal Tracks. Subscribe now, because the truth behind Yu Menglong's death is more twisted than anyone imagined. In the hours after Yu Menglong's fall, the story that was presented to the public seemed simple. He had been drinking, lost his balance, and died in a tragic accident. Yet, behind closed doors and on the hidden corners of the internet, another version began to take shape. One that pulled in some of the biggest names in China's entertainment industry. Fans whispered that Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, and Dilraba knew more than they could ever admit. Screenshots and messages started to appear that suggested they had already hinted at the truth in ways that only those who were looking closely would notice. The first wave of speculation centered around Yang Mi, one of the most powerful actresses in the industry, a woman with enough influence to make or break careers. In the days following Yu's death, old posts of hers were dug up and dissected. A few lines about the darkness of fame and the heavy price of ambition were suddenly reinterpreted as coded warnings. Some insisted she had been close enough to Yu to know the pressures he faced, and that her silence in the aftermath was evidence she was being forced to keep secrets. The theory grew that Yang Mi had been trying for years to tell fans that the glamour of show business hid darker bargains, and that Yu's fate was the final proof. Gao Taiyu's name entered the story through a different door. He had worked with Yu and moved in the same circles. Soon after the tragedy, a rumor surfaced that Gao had privately spoken about a mysterious USB drive, an object that allegedly contained sensitive information linking Yu to powerful figures. It was said to hold financial records, compromising videos, and names of those who manipulated young stars in exchange for silence. According to the whispers, Gao had warned people close to him that Yu had paid the ultimate price for refusing to hand it over. The story of the USB drive spread like wildfire, not because anyone had actually seen it, but because it explained the unease so many felt about how quickly the official narrative had been wrapped up. Dilraba, another star with massive popularity, was dragged into the speculation not because of what she said, but because of what she did not say. As millions of fans poured their grief online, her social media accounts remained almost entirely quiet. For many, the silence was proof of pressure. In an industry where even a single tribute could be enough to draw attention, her decision not to speak was painted as fear. Some netizens went further, claiming that Dilraba had been connected to the same industry deals that Yu resisted, and that her silence was less about fear and more about guilt. These threads all tied back to one document that haunted the narrative: Yu's supposed last letter. The text spread through commentaries and was later read aloud by online personalities who swore it was genuine. In it, Yu described shadows pressing closer and closer, voices demanding his submission, and threats that he would be destroyed if he did not comply. He wrote about being used as a pawn in money laundering schemes, about luxury gifts he refused to accept, and about being treated as a disposable toy by those with far greater power. He addressed his mother directly, saying he could not escape, that she should not seek justice because the forces arrayed against him were too strong. The words felt authentic to many fans, their pain echoing in every line. But there was no way to prove the letter was real. Authorities never confirmed it existed. Even so, conspiracy theorists used it as the backbone of their claims. They argued that Yang Mi's old posts were reflections of the same pain, that Gao Taiyu's warnings about the USB matched Yu's mention of hidden evidence, and that Dilraba's silence was her attempt to avoid being pulled into the same abyss. On social media, collages began to appear, placing quotes from the letter side by side with carefully chosen moments from Yang Mi's interviews, or Dilraba's comments about the industry. Fans created storyboards that turned coincidence into certainty. In those storyboards, Yang Mi became the actress who saw too much, Gao Taiyu the friend who tried to protect the evidence, and Dilraba the silent witness who could not afford to speak. To outsiders, it might have looked far-fetched, but for fans still in shock, the pieces seemed to fit together in ways the official explanation never could. At the same time, the rumors gave Yu a new kind of identity. He was no longer just an actor who fell to his death while drunk. He became a symbol of resistance, someone who had refused to bow to the darkest demands of fame and who paid with his life. The mention of Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, and Dilraba gave the story weight, suggesting that other major stars knew the truth but were trapped in a system that silenced them. This interpretation brought sympathy, but also deepened the tragedy. If Yu had really tried to protect himself, and if his friends had really known what he faced, then his fall was not just an accident. It was a warning. Of course, for every rumor, there was a counterpoint. The so-called evidence was always unverified. The screenshots could not be traced. The words attributed to Yang Mi or Gao Taiyu had no clear origin. Dilraba's silence could just as easily be explained by grief, or a careful choice to avoid fueling speculation. But logic mattered little in the whirlwind of mourning and suspicion. What mattered was that fans felt something was wrong, and the rumors gave shape to that feeling. This tension between belief and denial kept Yu's death alive in the headlines, far longer than any accident might have. The more the police repeated that it was simply a fall, the more determined people became to find hidden meaning in celebrity posts and cryptic notes. The names of Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, and Dilraba became anchors in a sea of rumor, proof for some that Yu's final hours carried secrets too explosive to be told openly. And though no one could confirm those whispers, the narrative of a young actor destroyed by forces beyond his control continued to grow, casting a shadow that official statements could never erase. By the middle of September, the narrative around Yu Menglong's death had shifted from hushed grief to a storm of speculation that refused to quiet down. On September 16th, just 5 days after his fall, a statement appeared under his mother's name. She said plainly that her son had been drinking, that his death was the result of an accident, and that the public needed to stop spreading rumors. It was the kind of appeal that should have brought closure, but instead, it set off another round of doubt. People asked why the family was speaking so quickly, why the tone felt so formal, and why the statement seemed to echo the police line, word for word. Rather than calming the storm, it added another layer of mystery. In those same days, new material appeared online that reignited every conspiracy theory. A video surfaced, allegedly recorded through a neighbor's peephole at the Sunshine Upper East building. The footage was dim, the quality poor, but the shapes were clear enough to spark outrage. It seemed to show Yu being escorted down a corridor by several men. At the rear of the group, a woman held up her phone as if recording. What set the internet ablaze was the strap dangling from that phone. Within hours, screenshots appeared, pointing out that the strap matched one owned by actress Song Yiren. Fans dug through her social media photos until they found the accessory in question, and suddenly, the story had a new villain. The idea took hold that Song Yiren was not only involved, but had personally recorded Yu in his final moments. Some accused her of luring him into a trap, of acting as a madam for powerful men who treated young actors as property. Others claimed she had been sent to document his humiliation. Her silence in the immediate aftermath only deepened suspicion, and when her lawyers finally responded, threatening to sue anyone who repeated the allegations, it did nothing to slow the speculation. To many, the legal threats felt like confirmation that she had something to hide. This was the period when Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, and Dilraba's names began circulating more aggressively in connection to the rumors. Conspiracy theorists claimed Yang Mi had quietly signaled her awareness of the situation in cryptic social posts that spoke of betrayal and despair. Others said Gao Taiyu had once mentioned in private conversations that Yu was being used as a pawn in a money laundering scheme, and that the USB drive everyone was whispering about contained the evidence. Dilraba's absence from the conversation was twisted into proof of pressure. Silence, in the minds of many, meant complicity or fear. On September 21st, the Beijing police made their move. They declared the investigation closed. The cause of death was an accidental fall while drunk. They stressed there were no signs of criminal activity. But the announcement came with something else. 3 individuals had been placed under coercive measures for spreading false rumors. The examples given were specific. One netizen had claimed that Yu had been forced into drinking by higher-ups and then assaulted. Another had accused prominent figures of orchestrating his death. According to police, these stories were fabrications that caused serious harm to the victim's reputation. For the authorities, the arrests were meant to send a warning. For the public, they had the opposite effect. If the rumors were false, why react so aggressively? Why target individuals for speculation if the truth was as clear as officials claimed? The crackdown made many people feel that something bigger was being hidden, and that the police were less interested in uncovering truth than in controlling the story. This was the moment when the conspiracy theories escalated. The peephole video was dissected frame by frame. Some swore they could hear Yu's voice in the background, though no audio was ever verified. Others claimed to see shapes that suggested he was being restrained. The supposed USB drive became a central character in the narrative, imagined as the key to everything from financial crimes to political secrets. Gao Taiyu's rumored comments about it were repeated so often that they hardened into accepted fact for some fans, despite the lack of any credible evidence. At the same time, new claims emerged about a farewell note. Commentators online said Yu had written a letter filled with despair, naming powerful figures and begging his mother not to seek justice. The text described being coerced into laundering money, being humiliated by an older man he called a prince, and feeling hunted by a princess in Australia. Though no mainstream outlet published the letter, its words spread rapidly through transcripts and recordings. For those already convinced of foul play, the note was proof. For others, it was another unverified story designed to feed outrage. Yang Mi and Dilraba became symbols of what it meant to survive in silence. Their fans claimed the actresses were bound by the same forces that had destroyed Yu, that they dared not speak publicly for fear of retribution. Yang Mi's occasional vague posts about the pain of fame were reinterpreted as coded cries for help. Dilraba's decision not to comment at all was seen as an act of self-preservation. Every absence of a statement became its own statement. Song Yiren, meanwhile, faced relentless attacks. Social media platforms were flooded with accusations. Some users claimed she had slept with dozens of men in exchange for favors, that her family was connected to political elites, and that she operated as a fixer within the industry. When her lawyers announced they would pursue anyone who spread these allegations, it only intensified the hostility. In the eyes of many, she was not defending herself, but hiding behind power. In this climate, fact and rumor became indistinguishable. The official story was simple and final: an accident caused by alcohol. But the public story was one of shadows in hallways, coded posts, silenced celebrities, and a young man who tried to resist and paid the price. Each new piece of speculation connected seamlessly with the last, creating a narrative that felt complete, even if it was built on fragments and suggestions. By the end of September, the case had become something more than a death. It was a test of belief. Did you trust the official record, the police report, and the words of Yu's mother? Or did you trust the whispers, the deleted posts? the videos that disappeared almost as soon as they appeared. The rumors painted a world where no one could speak freely, where even stars like Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, and Dilraba were trapped in silence. The refutations insisted that the truth was far simpler and that every added detail was an invention. Caught between these two versions, fans grieved not only for Yu, but for the loss of certainty. They clung to the idea that someone close to him knew the real story, and that one day, somehow, that story would be told. Until then, the peephole video, the USB drive, the farewell letter, and the silence of celebrities would remain the cornerstones of a narrative that refused to fade, no matter how many times officials declared the case closed. In the weeks that followed the official closure of the case, the atmosphere around Yu Menglong's death grew heavier rather than lighter. Every day brought new posts, new interpretations, and new battles between those who believed the official story and those who insisted something darker had taken place. The police had drawn a line under the investigation, but the public refused to stop asking questions. In that vacuum of answers, the silence of the celebrity world became louder than any statement could have been. Yang Mi continued to post carefully curated updates about her projects, avoiding any mention of Yu. For her critics, this was proof that she was under immense pressure. Theories swirled that she had been warned never to speak, that the cost of stepping out of line could be as severe as what Yu had suffered. Even her choice of words in unrelated posts was scrutinized. If she used phrases about burdens, sacrifices, or shadows, screenshots spread online with captions claiming they were veiled references to Yu's fate. What to outsiders might have looked like ordinary promotion was to believers coded communication. Dilraba faced similar treatment. Her silence was interpreted as fear, but also as guilt. Fans debated endlessly about why one of the brightest stars of her generation would say nothing about the sudden loss of a fellow actor. Some suggested she was protecting herself, others that she was complicit in the same networks of power that allegedly destroyed Yu. The lack of any public tribute became its own kind of statement, endlessly dissected in forums that refused to let the case go cold. Gao Taiyu was dragged back into the spotlight whenever the USB drive theory resurfaced. His name appeared in comments claiming he had spoken about Yu's fears before his death. Some users swore they had heard secondhand accounts of him warning that Yu possessed evidence against high-ranking figures. None of this was documented, yet the repetition made it sound more plausible with each retelling. In time, Gao was painted as the insider who knew too much but was too afraid to go public. The effect on the entertainment industry was chilling. Actors who had once been eager to share memories of their colleagues now stayed silent. Studios issued no tributes beyond the most basic condolences. Variety shows and interviews skipped over Yu's name entirely, as if pretending he had never existed. This erasure struck fans as deliberate, a way of wiping him from public consciousness. That absence only made the conspiracy theories stronger. If there was nothing to hide, why avoid saying his name? Meanwhile, censorship tightened further. Posts that used Yu's name alongside words like murder, USB, or Song Iron were deleted almost instantly. Entire accounts disappeared overnight, with users receiving vague messages about spreading harmful rumors. But instead of silencing speculation, these deletions acted like accelerant. People screenshotted what they saw before it vanished and shared the images in private groups. Those screenshots then leaked back onto the open internet, often with captions declaring, "If they erase it, it must be true." Outside China, Yu's death became a story about more than one actor. International outlets framed it as an example of how tightly controlled narratives collide with public suspicion. Commentators drew comparisons to earlier celebrity deaths, where explanations seemed too simple, too rehearsed. The fascination lay not only in the unanswered questions about Yu's final hours, but in the speed and severity with which conversation about him was suppressed. For Yu's fans, the result was heartbreaking. They wanted to mourn him openly, to celebrate his work and remember his charm. Instead, they found themselves pulled into arguments over what had really happened and why so many were afraid to speak. His legacy became tied not to his roles on screen, but to the mystery of his end. He became a symbol of fragility in an industry built on illusion, a reminder that even stars with millions of followers could be silenced overnight. As September gave way to October, one fact remained unshakable. No one in power was going to change the story. The authorities would not reopen the case. The police would not acknowledge the videos or the alleged letter. Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, and Dilraba would not step forward to confirm or deny what the rumors claimed about them. The silence was final, at least officially. Yet for the public, that silence spoke volumes. It left space for endless theories, for suspicion to grow unchecked, and for Yu Menglong's death to transform into one of the most haunting scandals in recent memory. Whether he was simply a victim of bad luck and alcohol, or whether he was silenced because he refused to bend, remains a matter of belief. What endures is the unease, the sense that a young man's fall from a tower in Beijing revealed not just the fragility of life in the spotlight, but the immense power of those who control the stories told after the lights go out. The police called it an accident. His mother asked for peace, but silence from those closest to you only fanned the flames of suspicion. Was it really just alcohol and bad luck? Or was a young star caught in a web of power too dangerous to escape? Yang Mi, Gao Taiyu, and Dilraba may never speak openly. Yet their names now echo in a mystery that still haunts millions. Whatever the truth, Yu's death revealed how fragile and dangerous life in the spotlight can be. For more hidden scandals and stories buried in shadows, subscribe to Criminal Tracks.